Maybe I need to turn this up. Shouldn't need to, but
Is there anything different between this week and last week?
Not that I know of. Well, I'm going to keep troubleshooting here, and y'all let me know if anything changes.
Well, maybe you should type that in the message if they can't hear you.
Right. I mean, I'm sure they will. Okay, so this is set to... Okay,
so it's working now.
All right, so I guess we got it working.
I don't know what you did, but is it still working, Cody? You can still hear us.
So now this is picking up. So if I turn this off, this should still be picking this up. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it unless I hear that it stopped working again. But it should be working now. I think to play it safe, I'm not going to play the intro or anything like that. I'm going to have to
okay.
Mess with it next time.
Technology
is
what happens.
Yeah, and if we're not checking stuff beforehand, which is something I should be doing.
You're not supposed to tell our secrets.
Yeah. Look, I blame it on summer, though.
It is summer. It would have happened if the kids weren't here. So we blame it on the kids.
Yeah, because I would have had time to check everything, and I don't. Actually, that's a good segue into today's topic, because part of that is a margin thing. Like, if you're overscheduling yourself and you're not putting enough, giving yourself enough margin between things, you don't account for let's make sure all of the audio channels are working properly before we go live. Today we're talking about hustle. So you ready to jump into it?
Yeah.
It's a different song.
Oh, that's right.
For the live thing, for the podcast we do. Oh, I want to say this before we, Cody, I saw your comment asking about the episodes that you only see. I think it's like the first 3 or 4. And that is because while we have been streaming these every week, and you are able to go back on the YouTube channel and see past episodes, I have not caught up with editing, so we don't have all of the episodes edited and published yet.
Okay.
But that's...
Are you going to release them in a batch, or?
What I'm going to try to do is maybe do 2 a week until we're caught up.
Okay.
At some point we're going to, because we talked about breaking up the podcast in seasons and stuff like that. So at some point we're also going to take a break. But
and then build up again. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump in. Welcome. What do I usually do? Okay, I got it. Welcome to In the Boat with Ben and Rachel. I'm Ben.
And I'm Rachel.
And this podcast exists to encourage and help creators. We speak from our own experiences and perspectives as full-time creators who work from home and are balancing pursuing our passion and family responsibilities and that kind of thing. So we hope in these conversations you find some of yourself and some of the things that maybe you're experiencing, and feel less alone, feel encouraged, and maybe get some ideas of your own. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. We're talking about the concept of hustle and really trying to answer the question, is hustle bad? I feel like, though, for some folks, and this is one of those things where, in the circles that I run in, that word has been used a lot, and spoken about positively and negatively. But not everybody will be familiar with
Yeah, I was going to ask
what we're
you
talking about.
To define it, because, I still have sort of a vague understanding of what hustle is. I mean, I just remember when I was in high school athletics and I ran track, and my coach would stand on the field and be like, "Hustle, come on, run faster," So
Yeah.
that's like the impression.
So that's definitely the
makes in my
first that's definitely the first memory I have of that word being used. And so there right off the bat, like it's got a little bit of a negative connotation,
Like
right?
I'm already hustling. Thank you.
Yeah. No, there's also, like the way that it's been used in movies when it's talking about like hustling, like so you're getting hustled or whatever, like somebody's taking advantage of you, that kind of thing. And I think it might have also carried some of that connotation into the world of entrepreneurship, um, and now into kind of the creator entrepreneur space. And it's been at first, I think some of the earlier iterations of the idea of hustle were really a positive thing. It was like put in the work, put in the effort. Don't let any moments go to waste building the thing that you care about. And it was really an idea meant to build a culture around a type of work ethic that um, that didn't necessarily glorify work, that didn't put work above everything else, but but kind of said, hey, put your money where your mouth is. If you say you're really passionate about this thing and you care about this thing, let that show up in the way that you work at it. Pardon me. My goodness.
Didn't make it any better.
No, it almost made it worse. Okay. So it was kind of like juxtaposed against, staying up and watching Netflix shows or watching stuff on YouTube or whatever, like that. Those types of activities were thought of as like antithetical to hustling for your business. And then it started to kind of take on this sort of toxic, negative sort of connotation,
like workaholic
in those same spaces. And it wasn't necessarily workaholism, but it was, you started to see people who were really embedded in and champions of hustle culture burning out and experiencing struggle and difficulty, and people kind of pointed to that as like, okay, well, there's like a lack of balance there. But as the pendulum swings, you start to also kind of take on this idea that, well, all forms of hustle are bad. Like hustling, if you're a part of hustle culture, then you're headed to burnout. And that's kind of like the black and white nature of it. And of course, as is the spirit of this show, we like to swim around in the gray a little bit. So as I've kind of defined it and shared, I guess, my experience with the concept of hustle over time, how does that match up with kind of what you've seen as you've been engaged in the creator culture?
I mean, the circles that I run in, I don't think anybody uses the word hustle. And I think part of it is that I work in an industry that relies on inspiration. And so there are different schools of thought where it's like you only write when you are inspired. And then there's another school of thought that's like you write every day, but in your chair, so that you can create that inspiration. And I kind of fall into that, you write every day, regardless of whether you feel inspired.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing in what you're describing is maybe some different terminology that might
Yeah,
be
I don't think
kind
anybody
of
would use hustle, but
describing the same thing. So
mm,
I want to hear more about the butt and chair
that's like
because
a big thing in the
I've heard
writing world.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I've heard you say that before, talk
Mhm.
about it, reference it as, a talking point that someone had in a keynote or something like
Mhm.
that. Describe that a little bit more, and I want to see how closely that matches with the way people use the word hustle.
Yeah. I mean, you can't take it literally because I use a standing desk, so but but
That
the what?
is a little bit of a brag there.
Yeah, no, it's because yeah, anyway,
No, not on purpose,
the
but yeah.
spirit of butt in chair is just that you show up every day and you do the work for however long you have to do that work. So it's more of a, because when you're first starting out, and with a lot of beginning writers, they, I think they're so intimidated by the actual work of writing that they'll write a little bit here and then they'll let it sit for a week or two and then they'll write a little bit here. But the way to actually, um, I guess, what am I trying to say? Like the way to build yourself as a writer and to grow as a writer is to do the work every day, even if one day the work is bad. And so that's how it's the butt in chair is used, is just that you show up and you do the work. You don't make your excuses like, well, I can't write anything today because blah blah blah, like all of those
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah, so in
it's not necessarily going above and beyond, which is what I think of hustle. Like hustle is you use every moment that you have, every extra moment, your downtime, all of those things as working at your creative pursuit. But it's more you show up every day
yeah,
and do what you
so
can.
yeah, so the butt and chair doesn't strike me necessarily as
Yeah, as a hustle
yeah,
term.
a
I think
synonym for
writers are a
hustle.
little more, like, all the writers I know are just they 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 don't really uh fall into the culture of hustle.
Well, and it's I think the world that I'm coming from was much more on the like entrepreneur side of
Mhm.
creator entrepreneur. And I think what's I think what's often true is that like the closer you get to the artistic or creative side,
The flowier,
yeah,
and
it's
yeah,
kind of
it's
like,
it's like
oh,
more laid back, and yeah.
yeah. And I think I, it's interesting to me because that seems a little bit like an identity in some ways. Like if I think of myself as an artist, the identity that I associate with that is this kind of laid back, like go with the flow, um, kind of work with your inspiration,
Yeah.
not being forceful, not being formulaic,
That
like,
definitely is. Yeah, like there's a big debate in the creative worlds about like what's the best way to do it.
and so as creators began to have more access to the marketplace, and I think of the um, early to 2010s up until now, there's this kind of growing creator economy.
Mm-hmm.
We use that phrase a lot nowadays, creator economy. But even back then, I think it was a thing where, unlike any time before, artists, educators, entertainers had access to the market, direct access to the market instead of having to go through a middleman.
Mm.
I think that's also something that's more recently true for authors. Authors having more direct access to the market through self-publishing versus having to go through a publishing house and an agent and all of that. And as that started happening more and more, I think what what you naturally see happen is obviously those creators who do tend to be a little bit more self-disciplined, more consistent with their output, more focused, more organized, have an advantage over the ones who have really embraced that identity
Yeah.
of like, oh, we're just going to kind of go with the flow. And even to the point where I think many artists and creators believed, and probably still believe, that by their nature they are not business minded people. And that's not to say that they're not right, but that they think of that as something inherent to their identity as an artist or as a creator. And so as you started seeing these creators become more and more successful, being able to connect directly to the market, I think some of the advice that comes out of that is, hey, the reason I'm having success is not necessarily because my art is great. It's not necessarily because the information I'm teaching is
New information.
new,
Yeah.
and it really comes back to some of those things like consistency and
Mm-hmm.
organization, and maybe having some business skills and stuff like that. And so hustle, I think, is an idea that encapsulates a lot of that kind of like, hey, like it's great you're doing your art thing, but like if you really want to connect with people and you really want to be successful, like get after it. Don't lose a spare moment. Don't
Mm-hmm.
waste your evenings and weekends watching TV shows. Like, you know, put stuff out there, grow your audience, and then like later, once you've got your huge audience and you're making a bunch of passive income, then you can relax.
Mm-hmm.
But like now is the time to hustle. So what do you think about that? Just like
Well,
as an idea.
I mean, I will say that I feel like my normal mode of operation is hustle because I am a really disciplined person and I do, I schedule every minute of my work time with hardly any breaks, which has come around to bite me a few times because it's like, something in the house happens and then it puts me weeks behind. But according to my schedule. But I think that there definitely has to be a balance with that because I do find myself, we talked last week, right, about taking rests. That was our, when I come up on my sabbatical weeks, which I just, I take a whole week off and rest, I do feel like I'm getting right on the cliff of burnout because
Mm-hmm.
of the way I work. And I wouldn't, I'm not familiar enough, I guess, with the hustle term to like call it hustle, but what you're describing is that's kind of what I do. And for me, it boils down to urgency. Like there's such an urgency to get things done, to finish this story, to start on this next one, to, all of the things that need to be done that it feels like if there is extra time, that's what I need to do.
Is that urgency internal or external?
I think it's internal for sure.
And can you describe that a little bit more? Like when you say urgency, what how would you describe what that feels like? And maybe the kind of story that you're hearing in your head that makes you feel like you need to operate that way.
I mean, I think it's so I'll look over like my story ideas and people are always like the writers I'm in circles with are always looking for their next story idea and I have, tons of them where I'm like, "Here, take them away." But they all feel necessary to me. So there's like this internal I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like this energy, internal energy that's like you need to put your energy there and there and there and there and there, and it's not just one, it's like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I have trouble with balancing. And I have to sometimes like email my agent and be like, here are all my story ideas. Which one should I work on?
Yeah.
So I guess when I say urgency, it's just like an energy in me. And I think the thing that I think about is either it's something that I feel like is important for today's children or today's teens, because that's who I write for, or there's something happening in our world that one of my story ideas will impact or make a difference for.
Yeah.
So there's just like this, it feels important.
Yeah. Now, when you think about that feeling of urgency,
I guess that's what it is too, is it's like the urgency tells me if you wait, it'll be too late.
Yeah.
But too late for what? I never asked that question.
Yeah. Okay. So when you think about that feeling of urgency, do you think about it as a positive thing or as a negative thing?
I tend to think of it as a negative thing just because it happens for so many. Like if I could just have that urgency for one project, I feel like it would be I keep hitting this mic. I feel like it would be a really good thing. But because that feeling crops up so many times, and a lot of times I can like sort it out myself, but it's super annoying to me because it's so hard to decide on those. I'm really bad at decisions. So
yeah,
I am not a good decision maker.
Well, and if you believe you're not a good decision maker and you've experienced the difficulty of looking at your various projects and feeling like you just can't choose one, I would imagine that increases the sense of urgency, because it's like, all right, if
you pick this one,
if I could have managed to just choose one and bring the same kind of energy and focus to it as I bring to everything I do, then this would get out in a timely manner. Like it would.
Yeah, I work on like 4 or 5 stories at one time. So
yeah. So trying to spread that energy out over multiple projects has to lead to, if they feel necessary and you're trying to address current events or whatever, like then it's like, okay, there's added urgency because you're trying to do the work for 4 projects that really like you can only sustainably do for one.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
What does that have to do with hustle?
Well, I think the idea of doing multiple projects versus doing one project at a time is I think it's a whole other topic. But I kind of want to push back on, or maybe kind of work through your thinking about it as a negative thing.
The sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Do you think that urgency creates hustle?
Yeah, I think it can. And urgency can come from a lot of different sources. So there are people who envision a lifestyle for themselves, and that it's internal, but it's a goal-driven kind of urgency. Maybe somebody's having trouble keeping up with their bills, or like they've got debt that they need to pay off. That can be an external. Maybe maybe somebody wants to impress somebody else. That's external. I guess maybe kind of a mix of both. Like really, really at the end of the day, everything is internal because it has to do with how we think and feel about ourselves, whatever the external thing is. But yeah, I think in this case, if your urgency is coming from a desire to get these stories out, to see them completed, because you feel passionately about the impact they can have. Um, I kind of think of that as a positive thing. And especially for you, just because I know you and I know how you spend your time, um, I I think you could pull back a little bit on the working out, maybe. Um, we'll have to talk about your exercise regimen is
Yeah.
very intimidating. Did I did I tell you that I wanted to do a week
Of my workout.
of your yeah?
You wouldn't be able to handle it.
I want to do a video one week. Like this has nothing to do with what the regular kind of content I put on my channel, but I'm curious to see like and I would kind of document throughout the week like me trying to keep up with my wife's workout regimen. I'd have to outline the whole thing at the beginning and people would be like, "What?"
Yeah.
How many miles do you run in a week?
It's between like 50 and 60.
So between 50 and 60 miles a week. And that's not am I right in saying that that's not quite half of all of the time you spend working out or doing something?
I'd say it's about half.
Yeah.
Because I do strength training and all that.
So
I have a problem, okay?
okay, so anyway,
That's part of my hustle, I guess.
yeah.
What if there's a connection though between my creative hustle and my workout hustle?
I mean, you can tell yourself whatever story you want to about, how that. I'm just kidding. So back to my original point, I also see in your life that you take time for other things. You take time for yourself, for things that you enjoy, that aren't necessarily directly connected to the urgency you feel for getting your stories out there.
I'm getting a little bit better about that. But
Yeah. So from my perspective, it looks like you are working on that balance.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been chasing that balance for like 4 years now and just like slowly trying to work toward it. And I think that's what people who have the hustle mindset or maybe have the personality that lends itself to hustle in a big way, I think that we just have to experiment with what balance looks like in that. Because I could work all the time. I love what I do. I could work all the time and y'all would call me down for dinner and that I'd go back to work after dinner,
yeah.
But it really does promote burnout, and you don't want to burn out, especially when you're a creative person.
Well, and burnout eventually ends up working against the things that you were hustling for in the first place. I'm going to write down because we talked about, what did I say we could talk about as like a separate episode? Multiple projects.
Balancing multiple projects. Yeah.
And the other thing that I think would make a great topic is the idea of balance. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've talked about that before.
I mean, it's come up in our discussions about rest and all of that, but we've never focused just on balance. I feel like balance is a big part of being a creative person.
Well, I'll say in the context of the conversation we're having about hustle, balance is an answer to the balance is the answer that is often used it's the solution that's often used to the burnout and the kind of toxic traits of hustle. But I also think that balance just for the sake of balance it's not necessarily the right thing to focus on, because when I think about hustle now, I think back to some of those kind of earlier iterations where it's like, hey, if you care about this thing, let your actions match your passion. And what I'm seeing being more helpful is kind of an inverse of that. It's like, I know that I'm passionate about something when I observe that I am hustling.
Hmm.
And when I see that happening, if out of kind of an arbitrary sense of needing balance, I keep myself from doing work that I feel compelled to do, I'm kind of doing that passion a disservice.
Yeah.
And so I actually, I'm starting to believe that hustle may not, it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
The urgency that you feel and the energy that you feel that pulls you into that work, you're not saying outwardly like, oh, I feel passionate about this thing, so I need to I feel passionate about this thing, so I need to hustle so that I can, prove that I'm passionate about this thing. You feel the energy is pulling you into that work.
Mm-hmm.
And you're recognizing that there's a potential there for, being so consumed by it, so focused on it that other parts of your life can suffer. And you're working to keep that in balance.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not having, like, you don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, I've got to make myself right.
Yeah.
You're much more connected to the why behind what you're doing, like what those stories will mean, the impact they'll have in the world. And because you're so connected to that, I think it makes it easy for you to feel compelled to sit down and write. And I'm not saying every day is going to be easy, like you can speak to that, but
yeah. I mean, I want to be clear too. I didn't mean to insinuate that hustle is bad.
I was kind of,
yeah,
I was leading it in that direction because I wanted to come back and make this broader point. So
I mean, because it's like my normal mode of operation, I think it's a good thing, but
yeah.
But that's just because I don't want to change. So but I do think it comes with, warnings and things that you have to put in place. So for me, I have to have my sabbatical weeks because I push really hard on the weeks before that, and I've been burned out before, and it's not fun, so you kind of have to know your limits with all those things too.
Yeah.
So especially when you deal with mental health issues. So there's another layer on top of just, just the work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think some of the conclusions that we are arriving at are, hustle isn't inherently bad. That passion precedes or produces hustle. And I think passion in most cases comes from being connected to the reason behind the thing that you're doing, the problem that it solves, or the positive impact it's going to have in the world. And that when you're connected to that, you're more likely to want to hustle. And the check that you put on that is not necessarily like, oh, I see that I'm hustling, I need to keep everything in balance. But it's like, no, I need to keep an eye on this. Like, if I see that things are
slipping out,
right, then I can address that, and I can work on that. And I feel like that sequence of, and that way of thinking about it, I don't know, for me, like I don't like feeling, I never liked the feeling of, oh, if I say I'm passionate about something, but I'm not hustling,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm just like lying to myself. And I think a lot of people have that experience. Like they they believe and have said outwardly that there's something that they're passionate about, that they say they enjoy doing, and then they don't see the work and feel a little bit like, imposter syndrome or like a fraud in some way. And I think a lot of that really comes back to um, focusing. And I don't know, maybe hustle culture is kind of the cause of this in some ways, but it's like focusing on hustle versus focusing on the why and the reason behind it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a game of shifting your focus.
Yeah. And to be realistic too, there's also the component of realism where um, not everybody can afford to write as much as I do. And
Yeah.
you're passionate about music, but you don't get to do it as much
So
anymore.
this
So
is
like,
this is one of those things though. Like I've said I'm passionate about
yeah,
music, and yet like I don't I don't wake up in the morning thinking like, oh, I need to write. Like I've been passionate about music before and I know what that feels like.
yeah.
I've been passionate about writing songs and putting them out into the world and I know what that feels like. And that's just not what I'm experiencing right now.
Well, there are also seasons to
Right.
that too.
Yeah,
So.
and that's fine. That's yeah, I'm not saying that as a way of like saying like, you know, why am I not doing this? It's it's really I think I'm kind of having this realization that like
This midlife crisis or something.
right. No, it's a realization and it's a question. So the realization is, yeah, like there's not some burning passion in me that's driving that activity. And I could beat myself up for like not spending the time and effort to match what I'm saying. Or I could ask the question, what is it about writing songs or making music that I really genuinely care about? And the answer, I could discover that the answer is I really do touch people through my music and, whatever. Or I could discover that the answer is, yeah, I just don't care about that as much right now in this season of my life. And that's okay.
We're tired.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. It's all okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those passions, I mean, I used to be passionate about music too, and then it kind of slid over to more to the writing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes those things just naturally happen when we discover more of our talents and, sensibilities and the things that make us feel alive. I was never big on the performance side of music, and you were, and so
I do miss.
You love the performing.
Yeah, I miss playing in front of people.
I love writing new songs and playing music and being in the studio and recording.
Yeah.
But the performance really got me. So.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of like you're doing it live, so if you mess up.
Yeah.
See, my thing was always like, if you mess up, most people aren't going to know unless it's like really, really like
unless it's like
you popped a guitar string
Yeah.
and pulled all of the other ones half a step out of tune or something. Yeah, so
which may have happened a time or two, but
definitely. But like I forgot words all the time,
yeah, you did.
and I would just make up words.
And I would sing harmony with the right words, and it would just
And then people would be like, "Wow, that's so creative, the way they did those harmonies." And
she was singing something different than he was. How cool.
Yeah.
Oh man, good times.
Yeah. Well, I really like this discussion. I love it when we talk about these things and I learn something new about myself. feel like I've got a little bit of homework to do. So
How are you going to hustle?
how am I going to hustle?
I guess we should do that in the after show.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you want to help this show out, go to your favorite podcast app, find the In the Boat with Ben and Rachel podcast, and give us a rating. Let us know what you think, or if there's something that we've talked about that's helped you out. And then if you know of anybody who would benefit from these conversations that we have, please share the podcast with them. You can share intheboatpodcast.com. Rachel, if they want to find you online, where can they go?
RachelTolson.com. I'm also Rachel Tolson on all the things, but.
Yep. And I'm at bentolson.com, at Ben Tolson on all of the things. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. After show time.
All right.
So how am I going to hustle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm kind of doing that right now. We've had discussions recently about goals and that kind of thing. I posted a video on my YouTube channel about a goal that I have for YouTube, and I talked a little bit about some of my other goals. And in the work of figuring out my goals, I answered a lot of those questions, like, why is this a goal?
Oh, that's cool.
Why do I want this?
Yeah.
And so I feel like the hustle that I'm experiencing, because I do feel like I'm experiencing hustle lately. And it's like you were describing, it's kind of this sense of urgency. And for me, it's kind of like urgency mixed with excitement. It's it's like, oh, I need to get this done. But it's also like, I want to get this done. Like I want to see this thing that I have in my head be real and out there.
So let me pause you real quick though. When you say you're experiencing hustle right now, how is that different from what you were experiencing before?
Yeah. So it's really, practically speaking, I've been writing several days a week.
Okay. Which you weren't doing before.
Right. Not on my own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been writing several days a week. I've been producing videos. And I've also been diligent about keeping to things that are on that are in my schedule, that I blocked out time for to achieve specific goals. So like, instead of getting, after lunch, instead of finishing lunch and then like kind of
playing on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah. For another 30 minutes or whatever, I'm like, okay, I've got this next thing on my schedule. I need to get to it because that represents this goal that I have. And I really want to see that happen, so it's that kind of thing. It's, I'm not going to say that like, I don't still waste time on social media.
Yeah, you're getting there.
But I'm working on it.
You're a work in progress.
But it's the difference. It's the difference for me between like, oh, I shouldn't spend time on social media, and looking at the things that I want to do and feeling connected to the reason behind why I want to do them. And in those moments, feeling like, I don't want to spend time on social media. I want to spend time on that thing. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the difference. Like it's not as much me actively trying to change that habit as it is like I feel like my motivations are changing.
That's good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us for today. There's another. Again, I'm hoping you can't hear this through the microphone. But like
there's another waste management.
In our cul-de-sac, there's another big trash truck just hanging out. I don't know, like.
It's this time every week, probably.
Yeah. It's like they come down in our cul-de-sac, and then the driver eats a sandwich, and then they
and then they move on.
and then they move on. That's what it seems like. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. It's good to see all of you, and we'll see you next time.
All right.